Hi everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm your host, Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. It's Pegasus World Cup Saturday, and Daily Racing Form handicappers David Aragona, Mike Beer, and I will take a look at three major races. Of course, the DRF Saturday race of the day, the Grade 1 $3 million Pegasus World Cup, the Grade 1 $1 million Pegasus World Cup Turf, but also a full field of turf marathoners in the WL McKnight. Craig Milkowski will have his time form U.S. pace projector for the Pegasus World Cup. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on one of the undercard races, plus best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Remember that David Aragona's special Horses to Watch piece available every Wednesday on DRFTV, video.drf.com, and the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Drops every Wednesday on demand. Mike, your Horse to Watch this week just keeps going up and up and up from a form standpoint.
It's going to be interesting to see where it all comes crashing down for Wicked Trick. This is a horse who was going nowhere in the maiden claiming ranks as a turf horse for much of his career. They switched him to dirt last summer. All he's done since then is win 6 in a row. He's 4 for 4 since Linda Rice claimed him. He keeps moving up in class and he keeps running faster races. Dan, let's look at the most recent win. They stretched him out to a mile for this one. This is a really solid field of older starter allowance horses, and Wicked Trick just runs right by this field. He opens up through the stretch, a 102 buyer speed figure. I gotta believe that Linda's gonna start looking for maybe a minor stakes race somewhere at Aqueduct just to see how he classes up with horses like that, because this is a good field here, and he just took no prisoners with a triple-digit buyer. It's going to be interesting to see what this horse does throughout the rest of this winter.
A couple of weeks ago, I made Rookie Salsa a horse to watch on this show based on a trip where he was in behind horses, couldn't get out until too late, and then rallied well for a piece. He was claimed out of that race by Claudio Gonzalez and ran back in this spot. And no, this isn't the same video. We're going to watch the race again, and Rookie Salsa's in behind horses, the number 2, down on the rail, and he's just got nowhere to go, and it looks like it's hopeless again for Rookie Salsa. In behind horses, the horse that's making the lead, the 3-5 favorite, Candygram for Mongo, is in very good form. Rookie Salsa gets to the outside. It looks like he's going to finish a solid second, but now he ducks to the inside, and he comes a running. This horse was good enough to win a stakes last year as an early 2-year-old. Gonzalez claimed him. He moves horses up. This was a starter 25. I think Rookie Salsa's ready to take the next step back up, perhaps to a 62.5 optional claiming level. That's 3-year-old Rookie Salsa for trainer Claudio Gonzalez. Let's get to some handicapping. The big one on Saturday, the Pegasus World Cup. Let's throw up the field for Saturday's DRF race of the day. Of course, it's the Grade 1 $3 million Pegasus World Cup, carded as race number 12 at 1 1/8. For expanded stakes previews of all the major races all weekend long, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Reminder, you can access free Formulator Pass performances for the Pegasus World Cup on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. Mike, big story of this race, the 2 morning line favorites, Omaha Beach, Spun to Run. They are out. That leaves Higher Power in with perhaps a pretty nice chance. And for a horse that won the Grade 1 Pacific Classic, was 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Classic, I'm not hearing a lot of buzz about Higher Power.
Well, maybe you'll hear more buzz about him now that the 2 favorites have scratched. It feels like he moves way up in the rankings at this point with those 2 horses. We'll see what happens, Dan. I think he's still got some questions to answer. Obviously, his Pacific Classic was a very good race with a 107 buyer, but it felt like that race was more about the no-shows than about his performance. I guess he ran fine in his last 2. I'm not taken with this horse at this point, Dan, but if he breaks running and gets the right trip in this race, I guess you got to consider his chances to be pretty strong.
Perhaps he's a little bit under the radar. Bob Baffert, never under the radar. He's got Mucho Gusto in here. Mucho Gusto did some good things as a 3-year-old, placing in both the Haskell and the Travers. But let's go back to his most recent start at Remington Park, and I wonder if Bob ran him one time too many.
This is a pretty disappointing performance. He's in between horses for a long way here. He's no match for the good Owendale late, but he's also going to get outfinished for 2nd and 3rd. It was pretty disappointing for a horse who took as much money as he did. As a 3-year-old, I guess his form was okay, and it felt like it was getting better before this race. We'll see if he can take a big step forward here as a 4-year-old, because I think he's going to have to.
Working quickly for Baffert, usually a good sign. He's got some tactical speed. Let's see what our colleague David Aragona likes with the two big names out of the Pegasus.
The major defections in this Pegasus World Cup have obviously taken a lot of the excitement out of this race. It's still an intriguing Grade 1 field, but not really that championship level race that we were hoping for. If you were going to take a shot against Omaha Beach, though, with one of the bigger prices, while you will have to accept a shorter price now, it's not like there's anybody in this race that's going to go off as some prohibitive favorite. So you're still going to get a square price on any horse that you choose in this race because the field is so competitive among what is left. I was going to take a shot against Omaha Beach with Tax, and I'm still going to stick with him even after those scratches, because I just think Tax is a horse now that he's turning 4 years old who's really coming into his own. I know he won that Jim Dandy and got a pretty lucky trip that day when he did it at Saratoga last year, riding the track bias most of the way, but he still earned a pretty respectable speed figure that day. I'm not going to hold his Travers loss against him because he drew that outside 12 post position. He came back off the layoff last time in the Discovery and was just unfortunate to run into an up-and-coming 4-year-old performer who is going to be among the best horses of this generation if he continues progressing the way he's been for Shug McGahee. But I thought Tax ran really well that day, got a very good ride from Irad Ortiz, but he did well to close from a little farther off the pace than usual. He got a 1:26 time Formula speed figure for that performance, and just looking through this field, that would have made him pretty tough to beat even if Omaha Beach was in the race. That's among the highest numbers any of these horses have ever earned. He's a 1.125 specialist, and he drew that number 2 post position, which is just going to be perfect going this 1.125 distance. So I think Tax is a pretty tough horse to defeat in this race now with the scratches. And I know he's 8-1 on the morning line. You're probably going to get half that price now, but even that 4-1, 7-2 would be fair odds on Tax in this Pegasus World Cup.
I'm going to go for a horse who was a pretty big price on the morning line. I think Mr. Freeze, number 8, will still be a solid price come post time, even with the 2 favorites scratching. I realize that he's got to probably take a step forward to beat this field. But he's run 3 triple-digit buyers in his career. His last 2 starts have both come against Tom DeTot, who's maybe the leading older horse in the country right now as we head into 2020. And I think he ran well in both of those races. We have a replay of his race 2 starts back to Fayette. This is a sloppy track. He was just sort of matching on the pace for the entire race here with Tom's DeTot. He's no match for this horse at the end of this race, but I think he stays on pretty well to be second best. This is a horse who has fine tactical speed. He should be close to the pace in this race. I think if he takes one more small step forward, he fits very well with what's left from this race.
I like the try he's shown in his last 2 races. You mentioned Tom's DeTot, just a better horse than Mr. Freeze, but Mr. Freeze gave it his all both times, and as Mike mentioned, excellent tactical speed. I'm with David on this one. I'm going to go with the number 2 Tax. I liked his last race in New York. Triple-digit buyer. I think the horse that beat him has a lot of potential for Shug McGahee. This horse is capable of getting good trips, and with his inside post position, he can save valuable ground going into the first turn. His figs put him right there. If he takes a slight step forward in his first start as a 4-year-old, I think Tax is going to be tough with these scratches in the Pegasus World Cup. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on one of the nice undercard races at Gulfstream. Let's go to her right now, then we'll take a break, and we'll come right back with the Pegasus World Cup turf analysis.
Well, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner Spun to Run forced out of Saturday's Pegasus World Cup owing to a skin condition, but his family still represented on the card. As we look at the field for the second race on Saturday's Gulfstream program, a maiden for 3-year-olds, the horse whose pedigree jumped out at me was Extreme Force, a half-brother to Spun to Run, both out of stakes winner Yawkey Way. Now, Extreme Force is stretching out to 1.16 miles after all 5 of his starts last year came in sprints. He recorded 1/3 and 2/4 in that span while running against some nice horses. You'll watch him here finishing 3rd behind Greenlight Go and Another Miracle, both of whom went on to be stakes performers at the Saratoga meet. Now, I do think he'll want to go longer, both because of his pedigree and because of his running style so far. In 4 of his 5 outings, he's had some trouble or been off a bit slow at the break. That may go away with experience, but a sprint certainly doesn't give as much leeway to recover from any early issue. Perhaps a longer distance will give him more time to get his feet under him and build some momentum. He's from the first crop of Constitution, a son of Tappet who scored 2 Grade 1 wins around 2 turns at Gulfstream, including here in the Don Handicap. Now, among last year's leading freshman sires, Constitution already has the likes of Tiz the Law and Independence Hall out there, both graded winners at a mile or longer. Now, Yawkey Way did her best work as a sprinter, but she's done well when crossed with Sons of Tappet, who have helped add some stamina to her. In addition to Spun the Run, who is by the Danzig horse Hard Spun, the mare has another stakes winner in Tap It All by the Tappet horse Tapizar. That filly won the California Oaks at a mile and a 16th. So I do think that Extreme Force merits a look as he looks to break his maiden with the added distance. This maiden race, one of several solid-looking events you can play around with on the Pegasus undercard.
Master horse racing with the power of daily racing form. DRF has helped players win at the races for 125 years. Now the information you trust is better than ever. Get exclusive late-breaking news from our reporters at tracks across the country. Position yourself to win by adding buyer speed figures and the new DRF formulator to your handicapping arsenal. Go to DRF.com today. Use coupon code DRF2020 to get a free formulator card and start winning.
Storm from Racing Blue, a breakthrough in sports nutrition for horses.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the co-feature at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, the Grade 1 $1 million Pegasus World Cup Turf. We're going 9.5 furlongs. It's carded as race number 11. And for expanded stakes previews of all the major races this weekend, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Some of the best turf horses in the country assembling for the Pegasus World Cup Turf. Let's see who David Aragona likes on top.
I found this Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational to be one of the most competitive races on the card on Saturday at Gulfstream Park because you can really make a case for a lot of runners. It's not just restricted to the short prices. I do respect those horses that are likely to be among the favorites. I mean, you've got to respect Magic Wand, the filly coming over from Europe for Aidan O'Brien. She just runs all around the globe and seems to perform well at a variety of levels against males. That doesn't seem to faze her at all. She ran well in this race last year. I'm using her, though she's not really a winning type. Mo Forza, he's 5-1 on the morning line. I could even see him going off as the favorite here. He's a horse that has really gained my respect as he's held his form in recent starts, and I thought he ran very well to win that last race at Santa Anita when he did not get an ideal trip, going very wide around the second turn to get the job done. He's stepping up in class, though, and he's going to be among the short prices, so I think this is a race where we can shop for a little bit of value. The pace scenario is pretty murky because the Time Formula's pace projector has instilled regard out on the lead. He's not a front runner, and that's the problem with this race. There really is no speed in the field, and I'm not going to get too caught up in trying to predict jockey tactics. In situations like this, I'm just going to settle on who I think is the best horse coming into this race, and in my opinion, that's Sadler's Joy. I think people are going to look at his 2019 record and sort of forget that this horse had a lot of interruptions and setbacks last year, and maybe not realize how good he was, even going back to 2 seasons ago, because he's a horse that is capable of winning going distances like a mile and a quarter. This is a mile and 3/16, but I thought arguably the best race that Sadler's Joy has ever run was when he lost the Manhattan 2 years ago, going the mile and a quarter distance, making a premature wide move that day. I know he's thought of as more a mile and a half type and a late running one at that, but he's got the turn of foot to be very effective in this race as long as Javier Castellano can time his late move correctly. And I just think he's coming in great form off that win in the Red Smith last time. It took him a while to find that form last year because he had that abbreviated campaign, but he's found it now, and I think he's going to be a real force to be reckoned with in this Pegasus World Cup Turf at what figures to be a decent price.
There are a lot of different ways to go in this race. I'm going to go for a little bit of a price with number 1 Zulu Alpha in this race. This is a horse who just held really good form throughout 2019 for Mike Maker. And as opposed to some of the other horses in this race who I think are more long distance specialists, I think he's going to handle the slightly shorter distance of this race just fine. He's got a good inside post. He has good tactical speed too. So I'm hoping that Tyler Gaffalione uses it because we're going to look at his most recent start right now. This is the Breeders' Cup Turf. And I'm not really sure why he was last all the way up the backstretch in this race, but he's not a horse who has to be in that position. You saw him swinging very wide at the top of the stretch, and he's actually going to put in a nice run through the stretch of this race to get up for fourth. He just had way too much to do in this race. I think this is a deceptively good effort in the Breeders' Cup, and I think he can handle the shorter distance of this race. He's going to be a price in this race, and I'm going to bet him.
I respect Sadler's Joy. I certainly respect Zulu Alpha. They are consistent. They pack a wallop in the lane. But I've been chasing my top pick, the number 7 Admission Office, for too long to pass up on him at the price he's going to be in the Pegasus World Cup turf. Maybe this is just too tough a spot, but we know Admission Office's story. He doesn't have a lot of speed. He's at the mercy of race and pace luck, and he often gets into trouble. Let's look at his most recent race at Gulfstream, where look at the half-mile split, 49 and change. He's last. He's widest. He really doesn't have a chance to run this entire field down in the lane, but he comes with a good, strong late kick, and he's just going to miss. One of these days, Admission Office is going to get the right setup and the right trip, and he's going to win one of these races. Maybe the Pegasus World Cup turf is too tough, but he's 30-1 on the morning line, and I certainly want to use Admission Office somewhere in my single race exotics. The WL McKnight, not to be outdone on this card, has a sensational full field, and it's coming up next. Let's throw up the field for one of the supporting graded stakes races on the Pegasus World Cup undercard. Race number 10 is the WL McKnight, a grade 3, $200,000 is the purse. We're going 1.5 miles, 3 turns around the Gulfstream Park turf. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Pumpkin Rumble, we talked about it in the stakes preview. He's been consistently campaigning in stakes since about 2014, and he's still in good form. Is he a synthetic horse at this point in his career?
I mean, listen, he's probably a little bit better on synthetic, but he's perfectly capable on turf. Listen, he probably wants to go even longer than the mile, and I'll have to, but he's perfectly capable of this over this distance. He's not my top pick in the race, Dan, but he's certainly a horse I have in my mix. He is the definition of a hard hitter.
And we'll watch his most recent race. Just consider that he's, 8 years old when he's running this race. He's dominating the field in the valedictory at Woodbine, going 14 furlongs for the second consecutive year. Distance is no problem. He's got good tactical speed, and in the past, he was pretty good on the turf. It's quite possible, though, that at this point in his career, this version of Pumpkin Rumble is just slightly better on synthetic surfaces. We know that Red Knight, trained by Bill Mott, he is good on turf, and he chased Sadler's Joy, who's going to be one of the major contenders in the Pegasus World Cup turf, and I have a feeling that's where David Aragon is leaning in the McKnight.
I'm not getting too creative in this race. I'm going with the favorite, Red Knight. I just think he's the class of this field. He likes this distance, and he handles the turf, which is more than you can say about his main rival, American Tattoo. To me, the real strategy in this race is to play against American Tattoo, the second choice on the morning line. In my opinion, he'd have to be a much better horse on the turf than he is on the dirt to have a real say in the outcome of this race, and I just don't see that being likely because he really has more of a dirt pedigree, and while he may have a pace advantage as the leader in this race, I just don't see him being able to step up in class and win going this distance against some really good turf horses, the group of which is led by Red Knight. He's not going to be any kind of great price in this race, but I just think Red Knight is coming in great form. He won that point of entry going this distance 2-back. I thought he was a very good second to Sadler's Joy last time when he kind of got held up in traffic at the top of the stretch of that Red Smith and finished up pretty gamely at the end of that race. If he just holds his form and gets any kind of pace to run into here, I just think he's probably going to win this McKnight at what figures to be a pretty short price.
I'm going to have to agree with David on this one. I don't have too much to add to his analysis of this race. To me, Red Knight just might be the best horse in this race. There are some good horses in here, but I think Red Knight is probably the best turf horse in the race. It's all about distance for him. The 1.5 miles is perfect for this horse. He's going to need to make up some ground in the stretch, but I feel like he just might tower over this field a little bit.
I agree with you that Red Knight is the horse to beat. I believe that American Tattoo is the horse to catch, making his turf debut for trainer Todd Pletcher. This is a horse who is a full brother to a runner that's done some good work on dirt, but he's a half to a horse that's done some nice work on turf in South America, and his speed is what drew me to him in this spot. We'll go back to his most recent race, an off-the-turf start at Gulfstream. He went right to the front as a short-priced favorite, and he got the job done going gate 2 wire. Breaking from this outside post, John Velasquez, I think, has one goal. It is to get to the front, back down the pace. He worked his most recent drill with Channel Cat. Pretty good Todd Pletcher turf horse. Held his own with that one. I think American Tattoo can get to the lead, get the jump on Red Knight turning into the stretch, and I'll be screaming wire at about the 16th pole. Let's go to Craig Milkowski's Timeform US pace projector. He's taking a look at the big one, the Pegasus World Cup.
Hi, I'm Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for Out of the Gate. In this week's Pace Projector segment, I'm going to take a look at the Pegasus World Cup, a Grade 1 being run for older horses at Gulfstream Park at 1 1/8 on the dirt. The reason I chose this race is because the Timeform US Pace Projector indicates that a fast pace is highly likely. I don't disagree with that given the big field and the makeup of the field. I start with a look at the preview page in here, and you can see there's several horses in here I've underlined that are either speeds or trackers and figure to go to the lead. And of note, they're also tightly bunched together. You can see more than the majority of them are drawn outside, meaning with the short run to the first turn, they're probably really going to have to go to avoid being caught wide. I've also highlighted some of the top late pace horses in the race by circling their Timeform US late pace rating. It doesn't mean that's who I'll go with, as you'll see, but I will take a look at them. Let's take a quick look at that pace projector, just a closer look, and you can see the three bunched horses right on the front. That would be True Timber, Mr. Freeze, and Bodie Express. Then I want to take a closer look at these just so you can see why. True Timber is a horse who's mostly been going one turn. His last three races that I show in the graphic here, he's been close up in 2 of the 3, and like I said, they're both at shorter distances, so his speed should put him more near the front. Mr. Freeze is a horse who has been running similar distances or a little bit shorter. He's always right near the front. And the infamous Bodie Express, for a variety of reasons, who disappointed a little bit last time in the Harlan's Holiday, but without a doubt, he's a horse who wants the lead. You can see by looking at his pace figures, 2 back, he can rate when he's on the lead by himself. He set a nice slow pace that day. Our fractions are coded in blue. But next time out in that tougher race when he got challenged, he went much faster, but he still wanted the lead. So drawing outside, I actually think the pace goes through him. He's probably going to be the pace setters, and others are going to have to deal with him. Now, the biggest horse in the race that we're going to have to talk about is Omaha Beach. Despite there being a big field of 11, we did have a late defection of Spun to Run, who came up sick. So he's not going to be in the race. He was probably going to be the second choice on the morning line. But that left Omaha Beach as the even money morning line favorite, which is really a heavy favorite. I do think Omaha Beach can win this race. He's done very little wrong in his career. He lost the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile to the aforementioned Spun to Run. Otherwise, he's been on quite a tear, winning the Grade 1 Malibu last time out. And again, I won't be surprised if he wins, but I am going to take a shot against him for a couple of reasons. First off, I've highlighted all his speed figures in here, and he's just not any faster than the rest of the horses in this group. He hasn't run that particularly good Grade 1 type figure. It's certainly possible he has the potential, but I'm not sure you want to take a short price on that kind of proposition. The other thing I noted is his 2 wins going around 2 turns. He was a horse who kind of wants to be up on the front. Mike Smith restrained him early. Both of these races came at Oaklawn Park, where he won the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby. But he made a big move after the quarter mile to take the lead and held it the rest of the way. If he tries similar here, it's going to be quite a bit tougher competition, and I think he's going to have a little bit of trouble holding on. As I said, he could turn out to be just the goods and the best horse in the field and worthy of that morning line, but all evidence points to the contrary, and I'm going to take a stand against. I looked at the 3 closers in the race that I had highlighted on that preview page, and the one that really stood out to me was Higher Power. I think he's a better quality horse than the other 2, despite those 2 having somewhat higher late pace ratings. But he's just been a better horse overall since moving back to dirt. 3 back in the Pacific Classic, a race he won at a fairly big price. I think he was about 9-1 that day. He was able to win. He was able to sit just off a slowish pace and just blow the field away. He's had a little bit of trouble the last 2 times. He hasn't come out of the gate very well, and that's cost him some trouble. In the Awesome again, he broke really poorly. He went to his knees. He did recover pretty quickly, but I think it cost him late in the race. And then last time in the Breeders' Cup Classic, he broke behind the field, got shuffled back to last, wound up being wide around the first turn, and I don't think it was an ideal trip. But despite those 2 things, he's still run a 119 or higher speed figure the last 3 times out, which is just as good as Omaha Beach has been doing. However, the horse I wound up ending up on as my top selection would be Tax. There was a lot to like about Tax for me. He was a quality 3-year-old. He had his ups and downs, but really stood out to me last time out. If you watch the stretch run of his race, which we're going to show here, he actually rated last time for the first real time in his career. He sat well off the pace back in 5th. A good 4.5 lengths off the lead early, and he made quite an eye-catching move going around the turn. He moved up, he was able to draw alongside Performer, and even though the Discovery was only a grade 3 type race, the winner earned a grade 1 type figure. Tax was right on that borderline with 126. I like that he does have tactical speed, draws inside, and most importantly, I really like that 8-1 morning line. So while I am looking for an off-the-pace type, and I will give higher power some consideration, Tax is going to be my selection in the Pegasus World Cup. That does it for me for this week's edition of Out of the Gate, and I'll see you again next time.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. David Aragona is going to kick off the card at Aqueduct with his best bet.
My best bet of the weekend comes in the first race at Aqueduct on Saturday. It's just a 6-horse field of maidens going the 1.125 distance with an odds-on favorite signed on, so it's probably not the kind of race that's going to intrigue a lot of people, but I think this favorite, while I do respect him, doesn't necessarily have to win this race, and that's the number 1 Modernist. He's coming in off a 3rd place finish last time behind 2 quality horses in Cost Basis and Kingmeister. Kingmeister, who was 2nd that day, came back to win a pretty loaded maiden race next time at Gulfstream Park. Also notably, the 5th place finish from that race, Warstopper, came back and exploded with a 94 Beyer performance when he broke his maiden next time out. So that race the Modernist is coming out of is a pretty strong maiden affair, though he's got to stretch out to the 1.125 here. He's going to be an extremely short price because his form is so exposed, and his trainer Bill Mott has another horse in this race, and that's the number 5 Distorted Sky. I think Distorted Sky is not just in here to make the race go, he's an intriguing contender in his own right because he debuted on the turf last time at Aqueduct going the 2 turns, and let's take a look at the stretch run of that race because Distorted Sky was outrun badly in the early going, was trying to close from far back. There wasn't a whole lot of pace signed on. Nobody was really doing a whole lot of moving around in the stretch except for Distorted Sky, who was really running by horses at the end of this race. He almost goes from last place to get up for 3rd at the end. He's striding out strongly across the finish line. He's just this big, imposing looking horse who looks like one that's going to have to race into fitness, and it's intriguing to me that Bill Mott is keeping this horse in New York to race him on the dirt because based on his pedigree, it's a little counterintuitive. His dam was a turf horse and she's produced nothing but turf horses. His best half sibling was actually a Group 1 winner on turf in France and Italy, but Distorted Sky is by Distorted Humor, and to me it's meaningful that Bill Mott is bypassing some maiden races that are there for the taking on turf at Gulfstream to instead run this 1.125 race on the dirt. He did the same thing with a horse last month named Harvey's Little Goyle, who ran encouragingly on the turf first time out, had some turf pedigree, but he ran around dirt second time out, and she really stepped up with an impressive maiden victory. I'm thinking Distorted Sky might be able to do the same because he looks like a horse that is going to absolutely love this 1.125 distance.
I'm going to move to the middle of the card at Aqueduct. Race number 5 is for New York bred maiden sprinting on the dirt. I like number 10, Impetuous, in this race. This horse debuted last June as a 2-year-old, and it just looked like a race he really needed. He was rated early. He came wide to the stretch. He was still green. I felt like he was really going to improve off of that effort. Unfortunately for him, he didn't race again for 6 months. And when he returned at the end of December, it was with this performance. We're going to pick it up in the stretch. And Impetuous has already taken over the lead here, but this horse had real trouble at the start of this race, carried in, bumped, lost position, made a big early run up to contest the pace all the way around the turn. You're going to see him taking over the lead here, but he's already tired past the 8th pole, and 3 closers are going to come and run him down at the end. And this is a pretty good New York bred maiden special weight field too. This is not a weak field of maidens that you sometimes see in the winter. He faced a good field here. He ran a good race. So even though it doesn't look like he improved in his second career start, I think he really did take a step forward, and I like him on Saturday.
I'm going to race 8 at Aqueduct. That's the Jazzle Stakes. I'm going to go with the number 7, Leah Tony, coming up from Gulfstream Park for trainer Jason Service. I believe this horse has won his last 4 on the dirt, including one with a triple-digit Beyer speed figure. He capped off his streak most recently at Gulfstream. Let's watch the race in the Claiming Crown. He was just too much for this field. He was odds on, and he was able to take over the lead at the 3/16 pole, and it's off to the races. Stepping up in class in the Jazzle to be sure, but I think he might be the controlling speed. Even with a razor-sharp Mr. Buff down to his inside, I think Leotoni's going to be sent out there, and in the form he's in right now, he might be a square price in a race that includes 2019 Belmont Stakes winner Sir Winston. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's latest offerings. Please follow on social media on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.